The country America is offering its most powerful financial weapon is the same country that was selling oil to Iran 6 weeks ago. That's not a contradiction, that's a strategy. Most people watching this have no idea it's happening. That weapon has a name: a permanent US dollar swap line. The same instrument the Federal Reserve used to stabilize the entire global financial system in 2008. The tool currently reserved for 5 countries on Earth: the UK, the Eurozone, Japan, Switzerland, and Canada. The UAE wants in. And 3 days after Besant started publicly pushing for it, the UAE left OPEC. 2 weeks ago, the UAE left OPEC. The Strait of Hormuz, the 21-mile choke point we broke down in video 1, is partially closed. The US Treasury Secretary is publicly describing all of it as a Bretton Woods realignment. Most people think this is an energy story. It isn't. It's a story about who controls the dollar, and whether the system the world has run on for 50 years just got replaced, in public, without anyone announcing it. The dangerous part is, the UAE leaving OPEC is not the story, it's the cover. While the war in Iran has every camera pointed at the Gulf, the US Treasury is quietly offering dollar swap lines to Gulf states, the mechanism used to wire countries into the dollar system permanently. The Genius Act, stablecoin legislation signed into law in July of 2025, has just created a digital dollar that reaches anywhere on Earth, without a bank, without SWIFT, without a correspondent bank. Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary, has been describing all of this in his own words as a Bretton Woods realignment. For those who don't know what Bretton Woods was, it was the 1944 conference where America rebuilt the world's financial system and handed itself the keys. Bessent is saying it's happening again, right now. In this series, we've been building toward this moment. Video 1, the Strait of Hormuz, the 21-mile choke point that controls whether the world gets energy. It's not hypothetical anymore. It's partially closed right now. In video 2, the Eurodollar system, the $13 to $30 trillion shadow market that runs global trade outside US regulatory reach. Bessent's stablecoin strategy is a direct move against it. Video 3, the petrodollar, the 1974 handshake that made oil a dollar weapon. The UAE just walked away from that arrangement, and now, video 4. The question isn't whether the system is changing, it's whether what's replacing it is stronger for America, or whether America is selling that story, while something else entirely is being built underneath. To understand why the UAE leaving matters, you need to understand what OPEC actually was. Not the textbook version, the real one. It's 1960. 5 nations, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, are watching Western oil companies extract their resources, set the price unilaterally, and keep the margin. Standard Oil, British Petroleum, Shell. They controlled the wells. They set the price. The countries sitting on the reserves, they get what they were given. OPEC was the answer. By coordinating production limits, member nations could restrict supply, control price, and take back what was theirs. It worked. The 1973 embargo proved it. Crude prices quadrupled in months. Gas stations in America ran dry. The most powerful economy on Earth brought to its knees by a cartel of desert states most Americans couldn't find on a map. But here's what changed everything. Washington didn't just sit there. In June 1974, the US sent a delegation to Riyadh. The terms, as we covered in video 3, military protection for the Gulf states, security guarantees for the royal families, defense against external threats. In exchange, every barrel of OPEC oil, to anyone, anywhere on Earth, priced in US dollars. Those dollars recycled into US Treasury bonds. The other OPEC nations followed within months. OPEC didn't stop being a cartel. It became the enforcement mechanism for American financial dominance. The dollar didn't just buy oil. Oil bought the dollar's dominance. Quick note: if you follow news, you'll see this as an oil story. If you read the system, which is what we do here, you see something else entirely. Hit the subscribe button below. Once a week, we read the system, not the headline. So, the surface explanation for the UAE leaving OPEC is a quota dispute. They have 4.8 million barrels per day of capacity. They wanted to pump more. Saudi Arabia said no, so they left. That's the headline version. That's what most of the coverage gives you. Here's the layer underneath. The UAE didn't just leave OPEC. They left during a war started by a fellow OPEC member, Iran, who had been attacking UAE infrastructure. Think about that geometry. You're a founding member of OPEC. Another OPEC member is attacking you. The cartel's pricing architecture runs through a strait that same member is threatening to close. The US, the country that guaranteed your security in 1974, is offering you something new. Something that doesn't require OPEC at all. The UAE energy minister told CNN exactly this. His words: "Timing is right because it will not significantly impact the market and the price because the Strait of Hormuz is closed and restricted." Read that again slowly. He's not saying they left despite the crisis. He's saying the crisis made it safe to leave. Because when Hormuz is closed, the UAE can't pump more oil anyway. The cost of leaving OPEC is zero. The benefit? Complete freedom to realign with whoever they choose on whatever terms they want. Then 5 days later, the UAE's foreign trade minister made it even clearer. His words: "It's under discussion. It is an elite matter. It is not about bailing out." Elite matter, not a bailout, not desperation. An invitation to join the 5-country club that has standing access to Federal Reserve dollar liquidity. The question is, which direction are they realigning in? That's where Bessent comes in. 3 days before UAE left OPEC, Scott Bessent posted this on X. "Extending permanent swap lines can be a major first step in creating new US dollar funding centers in the Gulf and Asia. Dollar dominance and reserve currency status are strengthened by constant long-term initiatives, including countering the growth of problematic alternative payment systems." Let's translate that. A swap line is a currency arrangement between two central banks. In a crisis, when dollar liquidity dries up, a swap line means your central bank can access dollars directly from the Fed. No SWIFT, no correspondent banks, no intermediaries. In 2008, when the global dollar system froze, the Fed deployed swap lines to stabilize it. Peak usage, $580 billion. Every country with a swap line stayed liquid. Every country without one scrambled. Right now, only 5 countries on Earth have standing Fed swap lines: the UK, the Eurozone, Japan, Switzerland, Canada. Bessent wants to add the UAE, specifically, right now. Here's what that actually means. The UAE leaves OPEC. The old dollar enforcement mechanism, built in 1974, and gets wired directly into the new dollar infrastructure through a permanent Fed swap line. They don't need OPEC to access dollars. They become a dollar hub. Old system, sell oil, earn dollars, buy treasuries. New system, dollar swap line, UAE central bank, regional dollar liquidity provider. Same objective. different architecture. One Washington controls directly. One that doesn't require OPEC at all. Here's the piece almost nobody is connecting. In July of 2025, Trump signed the Genius Act into law. Stablecoin regulation, crypto law, easy to scroll past. Here's what it actually does. It creates a federally regulated dollar-denominated digital currency that operates anywhere on Earth, without a bank account, without SWIFT, without a corresponding bank. The White House said this explicitly. By driving demand for U.S. Treasuries, stablecoins will play a crucial role in ensuring the continued global dominance of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Bessent put it even more directly. As President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. dollar the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. Here's the mechanism. Every dollar-backed stablecoin in circulation is backed 100% by U.S. Treasury bills. Demand for stablecoins equals demand for T-bills. Demand for T-bills equals lower U.S. borrowing costs. The Eurodollar system from Video 2, the shadow dollar market running $13 to $30 trillion, created dollar demand the U.S. could not see, could not control, and could not tax. Stablecoins create dollar demand the U.S. can regulate, they can track, and directly profits from. The target market, in Bessent's own framing, the $21 trillion in global South retail deposits, currently sitting outside the dollar system entirely. People in Nigeria, Indonesia, Vietnam, Brazil, holding digital dollars on their phones without ever touching a U.S. bank. Every one of those wallets is dollar demand. Every one of those transactions buys treasury bills in the background. The old dollar system ran on oil. And now, the new one runs on code. In April of 2025, Bessent stood before the Institute of International Finance and opened with this. In the final months of World War II, Western leaders convened the greatest economic minds of the generation. Their task? To build a new financial system. At a quiet resort high up in the mountains of New Hampshire, they laid the foundation for Pax Americana. He wasn't being nostalgic. He was describing a template. The original Bretton Woods in 1944 did three things. 1. Made the dollar the world's reserve currency by tying it to gold. 2. Created the IMF and World Bank as dollar-anchored institutions. 3. Locked in American financial primacy for the next 80 years. Nixon ended gold convertibility in 1971. The petrodollar replaced gold in 1974. That system is now under stress. Here's Bessent's version. Replace OPEC's dollar enforcement with swap lines and U.S. energy exports. Replace the Eurodollar's shadow system with regulated stablecoins. Replace physical oil settlements with digital dollar transactions on U.S.-controlled rails. Same objective as 1944. Same objective as 1974. New architecture. Unlike the original Bretton Woods, which required a conference, a negotiation, a public agreement, this one is being built quietly, in real time, while everyone is watching the oil price. Before we get carried away with the elegance of this strategy, here's where it gets complicated. The dollar had its worst year since 1986 in 2025, down nearly 11%. Its share of global foreign exchange reserves has fallen to 57%, a 25-year low, down from 72% in 2001. U.S. Treasury yields at levels unthinkable a decade ago. Large American corporations borrowing in euros because dollar rates are too high. That's the paradox at the center of Bessent's plan. The strategy requires countries to adopt dollar infrastructure, The credibility of that infrastructure depends on dollar stability. If the dollar weakens because US fiscal deficits are unsustainable, swap lines, stablecoins, and Bretton Woods framing don't fix that. They extend the runway, they don't fix the engine. There's also the world that isn't participating. China is building its own digital yuan infrastructure. Russia has been forced into non-dollar settlement systems for years and has built functional alternatives. BRICS Plus added 6 new members in 2024 and 2025, including 3 major oil exporters. What you're watching isn't the dollar defeating its rivals. It's the dollar consolidating its coalition, while a parallel system grows on the other side of that line. So what happens from here? 3 scenarios. One of them is already more likely than the others. Scenario 1. The dollar consolidates. The UAE swap line gets done. Saudi Arabia follows, quietly without the drama. Dollar-backed stablecoins reach $1 trillion in circulation by 2028. Gulf and Asian central banks hold dollar reserves through digital rails instead of euro-dollar accounts. The petrodollar 1.0 dies. Petrodollar 2.0, running on stablecoins and swap lines, replaces it. It's messier, but functional. Dollar remains dominant. The mechanism is unrecognizable from the 1947. The outcome is the same. Scenario 2. The fracture deepens. Saudi Arabia doesn't follow the UAE into the US orbit. It deepens the yuan settlement agreements signed with China in 2023. The oil market splits into 2 permanent tracks. The dollar track, US LNG, Gulf states with swap lines, stablecoin settlements. Non-dollar track, China, Russia, and BRICS energy exporters. Neither track destroys the other. The dollar's reserve share falls from 57% to maybe 45% over a decade. Still dominant, but shared. A genuinely multipolar reserve currency world for the first time since 1944. Scenario 3. The variable nobody is modeling. India. India is the world's largest democracy and its fastest growing major economy. India settled billions in trade with Russia in rupees after 2022. India imports more fertilizer from the Gulf than almost any country on Earth. India hasn't chosen a track. If India chooses the dollar track, swap lines, stablecoin adoptions, US energy imports, the dollar coalition wins by a margin that cannot be overcome. If India chooses the non-dollar track, or more likely, plays both sides until it has to pick, the fracture scenario deepens faster than any model currently shows. Watch India. Not the UAE, not Saudi Arabia. India is the variable that decides whether Bretton Woods 2.0 becomes the new global system, or the name for a coalition of countries that couldn't hold together. Here's what this series has really been about. Video 1 was about a choke point for energy. Video 2 was about a choke point for credit. Video 3 was about a choke point for currency. This video is about what happens when someone tries to build a new choke point and call it freedom. Bessant's framing is compelling. Dollar swap lines, stablecoins, American energy exports. A world where the dollar wins not through coercion, but through better infrastructure. Maybe that's true. Or maybe the architecture of dependencies just got an upgrade. Either way, the system is being built, right now, in the middle of a war, while oil prices are screaming and everyone is watching the wrong thing. The dollar didn't get its power from trust, it got it from architecture. And now, the architecture is changing. The Strait of Hormuz controls whether the world gets energy. The petrodollar system controls whether the world gets dollars. The euro-dollar system controls whether the world gets credit. 3 choke points, all under stress at the same time. The US Treasury Secretary is describing it, publicly in his own words, as a realignment. Not a crisis, a realignment. As in, this was always the plan. As in, the crisis is the cover. The system already changed. The only question left is whether you understand what it changed into before it's too late to matter. If this gave you a clearer picture of how the world actually works, hit the subscribe button below. We do one of these every week. Drop a comment. Dollar track or non-dollar track? Which side do you think India picks? We read every one. If this was worth your time, hit the like. It's the single biggest thing that helps this reach more people who care about this. Read the system, not the headline. See you next week.